Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I have a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
And today is episode 166 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2for1 studios, the best place to consume all of our content. And if you didn't know, and listeners, you probably didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas, that they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Well,
Which, by the way, if you're wondering, which all these listeners I'm sure are, why we're not
always
whispering the kapows, it's because the mic was not picking it up. So I still like the aesthetic of kapow, but unfortunately we're bound by the limits of technology to be able to do that. So just wanted to give some inside baseball on how all this like professional podcasting works.
I assume it's AI in some way trying to take over our podcast. Don't know why.
Absolutely.
It's something to do with that.
Absolutely.
Which we'll talk about AI stuff when we get to Secret Invasion.
Oh yes.
Yes. There's some interesting tidbits going on. Daniel, what's kind of weird is that there's a few things that's come out that you haven't watched yet, that we haven't talked about yet, that also deals with multiverse stuff, #Spider-Verse. And we can't really, some things we can't talk about regarding that movie with The Flash, but listeners, if you haven't already guessed that, we are talking about The Flash today, and there's a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, we're also kind of like on a condensed timeline to get everything we need to we have lives, people. We can't just drop everything for you, the listener. Like, we have lives.
Pay us more, sure, but until then,
yeah. And you know what? You can pay us in subscribers. You can tell your friends to subscribe and pay us.
Make more YouTube accounts. Just make some fake ones and just subscribe.
Yeah, I condone it. And I don't condone that. But this is a movie, Daniel, that I even come back into Arkansas to watch this. And you did, yeah. And I watched it twice while I was in Arkansas. And I watched the third movie.
Within 24 or maybe 12 hours. Like, at least within 24, you watched it twice.
It was within 16 hours. I watched it. Yeah.
Wow.
And
it's a lot of Flash.
I got some thoughts, buddy. I got some thoughts. I want to get your general impressions.
Yeah.
So don't get into the negative or the positives yet. Just get into your general impressions and hit me with those.
I think this movie is serviceably mediocre. Is probably how I would describe it. I think it's not horrible. It's definitely much better than a lot of the other DCEU installments, at least for me. But it is very not remarkable, I would say. I think the things that are most exciting about the movie have almost nothing to do with the main characters or the plot. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that is to me, it was, especially, I think, and I know this was just like stupid, they were trying to do viral marketing, but like the amount of people that have come out and said that this is one of the best movies they've ever, fucking Tom Cruise and Stephen King.
I would lose my mind if it was Spielberg.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like verbally praising it in this like way. And it's just aggressively mediocre. And I think they shot themselves in a foot a little bit trying to drum up all this hype for it, that it would never, ever, meet those standards. But yeah, that's my thought.
I just wonder, to kind of piggyback on that, I do wonder, I never thought about like them paying Tom Cruise for this blurb. And I still think it would be, I don't know, I still think that's dangerous. And I think
why would Tom Cruise do it? Does he need the money?
No, he can't.
Exactly. And it's like, what does he do? What does it help him attaching his name to this film? It helps the film. What does it do for him? Unless he's like vying for a superhero role, which we've heard rumors that they talked about wanting to get him in a role. But
well, Andy Muschietti came out and said, like, Tom Cruise called us to talk to us and told us, we talked about 10, 15 minutes about how much he loved the movie. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like Tom was paid to do that. He may have been nudged by like, hey, here's this movie, you gotta watch it. And then, but here's the thing, Daniel, here's my general impressions.
Yeah, go.
I saw it twice, and there's a lot of things I enjoy about it. There's just certain things in there it's more nostalgia than anything that I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That's a cool nod. This is a cool nod. But it's just kind of also, I've been thinking about it for the last week on my own and I've been watching lots of reviews and just people talking about it in general, the general consensus. And I wanted this to be my favorite movie of the year besides Indiana Jones. That's a different category of movie for me. I was hoping this would be like, it was set up like I was hoping to cry during it. I was hoping to get the chills. I was hoping like this was the movie that I was like, this is the one. This is, and even with disclaimer, Ezra Miller and all the accusations and all those kind of things, I was like, I was prepared to remove myself from like my brain from that the actor and just and take it as it is, and Ezra was never from day one casting Batman v Superman. I was like, that's the guy you got to play the Flash, and like I was disappointed with it, and I wasn't a fan of their characterization from the first frame of BVS, and even Justice League. I'm like, okay, it's not, it's not what I want at all, but it's like, okay, I guess it could be worse. Not, I mean, maybe it couldn't be. And I actually liked him in Zack Snyder's Justice League enough. I'm like, okay, well, like it's a little more serious and less goofy. And that already, I'm kind of going into the movie thinking, this isn't the version I was ever wanting to get. But the trend I keep coming back to lately, Daniel, with all these movies lately is like, I just think we could have done it better. I just think that with, all the ideas and all the source material and all the people you can grab, I just think that at the end of the day, there's just a lot of things left on the table that we could have done better. And a lot of choices. I think also, I saw someone vehemently, another YouTuber, basically like, no, the visual effects are perfect, and they were talking about like they said that the Chrome Dome stuff, right, where it's like otherworldly, they're the Flash, like all the cameos, like that's a stylistic choice, right? And like I agree with that for the most part. Like, yes, that was a poor stylistic choice that kind of confused audience members and it confuses me. But when I say bad visual effects, I'm not talking about the Chrome Dome, even though I think that's a missed opportunity. I'm talking about the horrendous amount of deep fakes onto the Flash. And that is like, to me, a huge detractor, which I'll get into a little bit later, but of the movie for me. But if the visual effects were better, I think I would just, I'd feel a little bit better about the movie overall. But, I get a little emotional, just a little bit with the mom stuff, which that's like your bread and butter. But I just think, I don't know. I think we could have done it better. There's a lot of things I like about it. Don't get me wrong. I just think that there's just so much on the table. I'm like, why'd you do that when you could have done this? Why'd you do this when you could have done that? And that's the problem. Also, when you have a director come in and they got a certain vision, it doesn't line up with ours, But then you have movies come in again, like Endgame. I think that's this problem, Daniel. I think you said this before. I didn't want to admit it. I just think we might have peaked a little bit in superhero genre when the ultimate type of movie with this kind of movie, the ultimate outcome for these kind of movies is I'm sitting there at the end of it and I'm like, in hindsight, could you make things better? 100%. You always can. But when I'm sitting there watching Endgame and they're hitting all these moments and you're like, okay, could I make something better? I mean, probably if I just, with infinite amount of time and resources, but I don't have to, Daniel. Yeah. It's good enough. And good enough is not like, oh, it's the bare bottom. It's like, no, this is good. Like this is hitting me and like I could if I create something that has to be at least as good as this to replace it. It's not like I'm saying like the best idea it felt like was winning in Endgame and Infinity War, probably more so in Infinity War, but I feel like that's what I felt. I don't feel like the best idea is winning lately in a lot of these movies, and a big part of that is studio changes with Warner Brothers and Discovery and James Gunn coming in, those kind of things, which we can get into. but I think overall, this was not the best. This is not even. They say it's the best superhero movie ever made. That's the blurb I've been seeing. It's currently at a 66% Rotten Tomatoes, which is fresh. And it's at 84% audience score, which is not like amazing. It's not bad. That's like good. That's not great. It's good.
Yeah.
Maybe it's slightly below good, honestly.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like, the movie accomplishes everything it wants to accomplish, I think. Right? I just think it wasn't an enjoyable ride for me. You know what I mean? And it's a thing of like, when you're comparing things to Endgame and you're comparing things to the Marvel, I think to me, what made Marvel, the Infinity Saga work so well was one, you took your sweet ass time building to it. Right. And you did a slow progression. And also I think what Marvel hits right every time is the emotional stuff. At least on their best movies, the emotional internal arcs are very strong, right? Winter Soldier, the internal arc is Steve trying to get his best friend back and willing to like kill himself to save his friend. That's the point of that movie. Not, yes, the espionage, yes, Hydra, cool, but that is the gut puncher, and that's what makes that movie work. If you take that out, it's an average spy thriller, right? Yeah. And I think the same thing with Endgame and Infinity War. The thing that makes those hit are the characters that we feel connected with, and they feel like real people inside their world, right? With complex emotions and complex, desires and all these kinds of things, and we see them fail and it crushes them, and then we see them find a way back, and it is like this inspirational, heartwarming thing. And I think with DC, I think The Flash is a great example of this. It hits, kind of these like appropriate marks narratively. Like I think it's a pretty self-contained plot. It mostly works with itself. Like I didn't like feel like there was any like big plot holes, or like the plot for me was the most interesting part of the film, just to see what would happen next. Right. So that was working. But when I get to like the characters and the heart level stuff, and I think part of this is like, I agree that Barry Allen does not work for me.
I think that's a big part of it for us.
It is a big part. And I think it's this thing of like, for one, I don't love him. And then for half the movie, we've got double doses of him. You know what I mean? Where it's
the other doses. I mean, listen, that's his laugh.
And here's the thing. Almost
wild.
The younger version almost works better because older version of Barry Allen still acts like a child emotionally and mentally, but he's pretending he's mature. And that doesn't work for me. The way he responds to things, I feel like I'm watching an influencer do like a live stream, how they're like reacting to this just very like overly dramatic, overly like kind of I already know everything. Don't this kind of just weird attitude that feels like a child to me. I don't meet many adults that are mature that act like that. And the younger version of Barry, I'm like, oh, he's in college. He should act like this a little bit. So I can almost accept his acting in that way, even though it is more over the top and very annoying sometimes. The modern Barry Allen just feels so like I don't believe him. I don't believe that that. I guess it just feels.
I'm
like
a little different there. I almost always not almost always. I always prefer the older Barry Allen to the other one. There's just not a situation like there's not a situation in that movie where I'm like I want to see the other one more.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean like I think it's part of the hang up there, and I think that I think Ezra's a good actor. I really do. I think they're great. I think they're a great actor. I think he's miscast, and I think that even just like him doing the emotional stuff with his mom. This may be me nitpicking. I don't know, but like even the cadence and like what it sounds like for him to choke up. Yeah. It just doesn't seem. It doesn't hit me like I don't know. I feel like. There's other actors out there who could have done that moment differently or better or whatever. I don't know if better is the right word. I think just differently that would have hit me better. But because I think that's the thing is when I'm walking into these movies, Daniel, I am rooting for them so hard. Like it's
sure.
I'm never going in there like, man, I hope this movie sucks. Like I'm going in there like I hope this thing does gangbusters, you know.
Right.
And I kind of want to talk a little bit about
Your little kitty's chasing its tail up there, and it's really cute behind you.
her name's Leia, and she's very adorable.
Yeah.
She's a great cat, actually.
She's chasing her tail. It's hilarious.
I think hey, we just go. I'm gonna talk about some of the positives real quick.
Yeah, let's go.
talk some of the positives. So, one, it is cool revisiting the Snyderverse in a lot of different ways. We get to see virtually every member of the Justice League besides Cyborg for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Ray Fisher,
Yeah.
you know, and I was surprised to see Wonder Woman in there. Honestly,
I was. Yeah.
I love Ben Affleck's Batman when he was on the motorcycle when he was CGI Batman. I wasn't a fan of him standing there on the bridge next to Wonder Woman and Flash. Like that suit looks like
look great.
It looks like an action figure suit or something. I'm like, holy shit, this does not look good.
Should have been darker blue at the very least.
Well, it looks too clunky on his chest. But I loved all the other things. And I thought that as far as Batman goes, because that night they announced Andy Muschietti is directing The Brave and the Bold. I was like,
right.
As far as Batman goes, I think he did pretty good. Like, I mean, like, okay, like I can see this guy doing I assume it's gonna be a lighter take on Batman because he's gonna have a son.
Yeah.
And like in a more brighter universe potentially. I don't know that. It could be like dark as shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, you know, I'll give Andy Muschietti a shot with The Brave and the Bold. Like, I think he can. I think he's earned that at least, you know. Because the Batman stuff looked pretty good. The visual effects and all Batman looked pretty good. Like, it didn't look bad, you know. And also, you don't have to create you don't have to create unrealistic or reality bending things with Batman. You just got to create like realistic looking stuff, which typically works better in visual effects.
Yeah.
I loved Ben Affleck when he was out of the suit. You know, I loved the conversation between him and Barry when he's like, I can save your parents. And he's like, you know, and I love what Bruce tells him. Like, and also I felt like this was the first time we see the best version of the painful Bruce Wayne. And like, when I love when he asks him, do you want to hang? Like, you know, he's like, we're lonely. And he's like, well, do you want to hang out? And even after talking about like, you know, you're alone and stuff, Bruce still tells him no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruce is like, not tonight. And it was just like, Bruce is so tormented. I was like, oh,
yeah,
that is the version of the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne I didn't know I needed until I saw it. That was good stuff.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton as Batman was amazing. He killed everything he was in, even though I think that he was also utilized in poor ways. I'm not a fan of like how he was brought in with the hair and all that kind of stuff, and like he's doing kung fu on the kitchen, and like I'm like that doesn't feel like it's just it's weird in terms of it to me. It's not the Tim Burton Batman.
Right.
It's a Batman that looks like the Tim Burton Batman and acts like him in a lot of ways, but it's not that version of it's not the 89 Batman to me, you know. And maybe it was, but it doesn't matter because it's like a new reality anyway. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, just to speak on Keaton real quick, I think he was one of the most enjoyable parts of the film. I have to gripe though, because they gave him 2 one-liners that they just copied and pasted from 89 Batman. And I just think, like, I think
you should only have one of them.
Sure, and it should have been the Batman one. It shouldn't have been, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts, because it just feels so like, you said that to the Joker when he was crazy, right? Like I think that's the line that comes from. And it's like, it just feels so like, okay, I can give you him saying, I'm Batman, because that contextually works. He's introducing himself and he can just do the line again. But when they do the nuts, like, you know, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. I'm just like, no,
well, to be fair,
don't do that here. And
he does it
zooming in on him, and it's just this like, do the one-liner, Batman. You know, it's just
he does it
manufactured.
I do think in the context, it's the best version in terms of like how he could have said it. It doesn't remind me of like how he said it in the movie. The problem is, you're right, 100% that they should only picked one.
Yeah.
And it's not something that the let's get nuts thing is that's a thing that he said in the movie, and then it would end up becoming a pop culture thing.
Right.
And it's like that's not like a catchphrase that Batman
And
or Bruce
again,
Wayne says.
he was chasing a person that was like mentally, like just someone that's mentally deranged. So it like works.
Well, he was in that moment in the first movie. He's deferring the situation and trying to also pop up Bruce Wayne as someone who's, it's like he's just I was more okay with it with you are, but another issue is that it's in the exact same place as he says the "I'm Batman" line.
Yes, in the exact same framing, everything.
Exactly. So it almost feels like it almost feels like that could have been shot in the same day.
Of course it was.
It was. It was shot in the same probably hour.
Yes.
But it almost feels like it was supposed to be in that moment, and they're like replaceable, and they're like, hey, we can also fit it also in this moment. And so because they could.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was originally in the script like that. I would be curious to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
But it would have been cool to see Gotham as we know it in the Tim Burton universe, and not just this mansion that's like Tim Burton that's plopped into the middle of this, whatever. Right. I think it would have been cool to see Bruce Wayne Batman mixed in with.
We'll find out why he's this hermit guy now. Like, did something bad happen in this universe that made him quit? Was he broken by Bane in this one? I mean,
they said that he cleaned it up. There's no more crime really, and so he stopped being Batman. That's what they said.
Okay. I missed that. That's boring.
Yeah, that's what they said, and it was kind of like, well, I almost think that he should have just been operating still as Batman. And
the Batman takes care of problems that are more than just Gotham in all the comics. I mean, he kind of is involved in world issues, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it should. Yeah. I mean, again, that's the thing that we start to just unraveling some of the plot. There's a million different things. Like you're like, you could have done this, and I get it. And I'll say this: the movie is, in my opinion, pretty well paced.
I agree.
So I can see like we need to get Batman in here, and there's this scene, and so like they're making concessions, and I give them that, and it is well paced. So like
I agree.
I can understand the argument of like doing the things that I would probably do and how that would kind of slow pace, but I think there's a way of doing it though. I also love Daniel. I love the explanation of the multiverse and the time travel. I love the fact that it basically creates a nexus point.
Yeah,
and it changes not only the future but the past.
Yeah.
I like that explanation a lot.
I do too.
And I was like, that was pretty cool. And like, it makes sense of why things are different. Batman, why Zod's happening, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I love all the Michael Keaton stuff. I mean, Michael Keaton fighting in that Russian place. God dang, that was cool looking. Like that was a cool looking Batman fight.
Yeah. And just, I mean, once we got to his action, it was really fun getting to see Michael Keaton Batman more modern, right? Fight in a way that looks cooler and looks more realistic. And I loved kind of his gadget stuff he did. I loved the fight with that big dude where he kept like putting little bombs on him. That felt like so classic Batman.
It did.
Taking down a bigger guy with gadgets, kind of outsmarting him. I agree. I really like once he got rolling, I thought Keaton was great and one of the better parts of the film for sure.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too, is like all the older people and even me, it's like, I mean, that's the draw. I mean, you're going to see Michael Keaton's Batman. That's why.
Yes.
I mean, and he ended up becoming a focal point in the marketing, and for good reason. Like I'm not quite sure I ever would have imagined I would see Michael Keaton return as Batman in my lifetime. With the actual actor.
What's wild is there's a whole movie that will never be released that had him in it too. I've seen some of the stills behind Batgirl, and it's like,
and they look good.
They do look good.
They almost look. You know what? I was like, these looks better than some of the shots he was in Flash.
Well, it looks more like the version of Bruce Wayne we wanted. Like
it looks more like Tim Burton lighting.
Yes,
and like the light where like it's just on his eye right
very
there.
Gothic house and stuff. Yeah. Now who knows? Maybe the rest of the movie is just dog shit. And
maybe it is.
But the Michael Keaton photos I saw, it was just like, oh man, he was in that movie a lot. It seems like a significant.
Well, I think it was probably 5 to 10 minutes max. Okay. But and also here's the thing: who knows? Because they said this was the greatest superhero movie of all time. Who knows?
Right.
And
Exactly.
here's the truth, everyone. It's not in the top 33. It's not in the top 33.
No.
And I know that because there's at least right now 33 MCU movies. I'm not saying it's better than every single one of those, but just using that metric that there's 33 MCU movies, I know it's not, it might be better than 5 of them, maybe like Thor the
Sure.
Dark World, just based on nostalgia
It's
alone.
probably better than Thor: Love and Thunder. I think I probably enjoyed this movie more than Love and Thunder.
It is better than Thor Love and Thunder just for the fact that
It takes itself
Thor,
seriously.
it took itself seriously, and Thor actually like it was at a great place beforehand, and he just devolved into this other character again.
Yeah.
So like so it's better than the at least two Thor. So just again the metric,
Yeah.
33 movies better than 5 of those. But then you got to look at just top of your head. There's the Dark Knight trilogy. That's 3 movies right there.
Right.
And then you have Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2. That's 2 more. That replaces the 5 that was better than MCU. So I know it's not in the top 33.
Yeah.
Just like that.
I might like the Amazing Spider-Man's better than this, just because I like Peter Parker better, and I like Andrew Garfield. I like his performance as that. So there's like a character I'm enjoying being around in those movies, and like at least the main character, the protagonist. I'm like, I like him. I want to hang out with him, and I think that is a huge part of this movie. I think, and maybe it's just like, in some ways, I feel like Ezra was cast in that role to try to generate more young audience interest.
Well, I think it was also just, I don't know his nationality, but he was also, I want to say, part Latino. I don't know.
Maybe so. But it's just a thing of like, he comes off so grating to me as a character, just how he talks and how he presents himself. And I think when you don't want to hang out with the person that spends 90% of, like, it takes up 90% of the screen time, that's a hard thing to overcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think,
yeah.
And just to speak out,
and
just to throw it on again, the CGI and deep faking was so atrocious. It's like
It's
every
the biggest
time I would
problem.
notice it, I would like recoil and try to not look at it again, because it wasn't just didn't look good. In some places, it just looked like really creepy and like really uncanny valley in a really like weird way that it's just like, it just gave me the shivers. Like uncanny valley, I've heard it described as like, it's like our ability to recognize something that looks like human but isn't human. And some people have speculated that we have this because there was like aliens that walked among us, and that's why we have this uncanny valley kind of mechanism in our brains that says that looks like human, but I know it's not somehow. But
it's a survival mechanism.
It is, and it is interesting to wonder, why would we develop that if there weren't things that looked like humans but weren't. But all that to say is
interesting.
It is. It's a good movie idea, right?
It's a great movie idea.
Anyway, so yeah, I think it is like, when you have a main character that just doesn't jive for me, and then most of the time he's on screen, he's paired with like a freak of nature CGI monster thing. It's just, I think if you change the actor, if Ezra wasn't Barry Allen, I think this movie, for me at least, probably works 50% better, if not more.
I'll say this: it's like BVS. Like, I had like 3 problems with BVS. Change Lex Luthor,
right?
Don't have Batman kill anybody, and then make a comic accurate looking Doomsday. That was the 3 things you needed to do to like get me 100% on board.
Right.
And there's other things. Obviously, it's debatable, but like those 3 things, I've been like, everyone shut up. It's fine.
Yeah.
This one, it's like you had a different Flash actor.
Yeah.
1, 2, the visual effects.
Yeah.
And it's 2 front. That'll be 2 and 3. 1, like I told Matt, I was like, ever since I've been in film school, I've developed this problem when watching movies where I'm watching someone talk, and then when it cuts to the reverse, I will always be watching the person who's not talking now.
Like to see if it's continuous. Yeah.
For continuity.
And most of the time it's not. A lot of times it's not.
Almost 90% chance it's not.
Yeah.
And it's a problem I've developed. And so it takes me out of the movie. It's my fault. It's my filmmaker brain going. With the Flash, it's like, when they're first introduced, it works pretty well. And I saw this YouTube, I'm not going to call him out, this YouTuber I watch. He's like, it's the best use of duplicity or Parent Trap technology I've ever seen.
Literally, the Parent Trap in 1999 did better.
It did better.
Now, here's the thing. I bet it cost more because they had to film basically every scene twice.
Well, that's the
Parent
thing.
Trap,
I don't.
right? And I do. This probably was more efficient because you didn't just have to like, all right, Barry, do this scene in this costume with this hairstyle. Now go to makeup, go to costume, change everything, and come back and do it again.
Well, I thought they
Long days.
did. That's what I thought at first. I was like, I thought this is how they made the movie. Like, and they even said like Ezra had to play 2 roles, and I'm like, based on the shots, he didn't.
Well, he did,
Like-
but he just never had to play them against him. Like, it was always his lines coming out, right?
Well, here's how you do it, right? You have the shot. It's on tracks. It's on rails, and it has motion control on it. You do it with Ezra 1. You rewind. And you do it with Ezra B. Right, and then you stitch them together. That's how you do it perfectly.
And it is more work than probably what they did. It's probably more time consuming.
It is.
It probably
What it
costs
looks
more
like.
to be on set with a full crew than have a VFX team fix it in post.
What it looks like is they had Ezra they just like flip flop depending on whatever situation, whatever day they were shooting.
Yeah,
they had Ezra playing either Ezra A or Ezra B, and whenever he wasn't playing the other one, so there was a stand-in, and then they recorded his face doing the lines in some studio booth,
right,
and used that tracking and the information there to deep fake onto the other actor. But the thing is, it's constantly flipping. It's like Ezra A is Ezra, and then he's deep fake Ezra, then he's Ezra, and then and then there's some shots where it's like a close up of just one Ezra, and that's a deep fake Ezra.
Yeah.
And it's like, did you not shoot that close up at all with the actual actor? You just shot the other guy? Like, what? Like, it makes absolutely no sense to me. And like, and because the way they kind of did it was like most of the time, Ezra the actor, when he's playing the actual, when it's actually him doing the role, he's almost always in the foreground. He's almost always in focus.
Yes.
And the other actor, the stand-in, is always out of focus, and then they deep fake onto the out of focus version of him. And so it's like, but it's so like noticeable, like, because sometimes his face is long, sometimes it's short, and sometimes his eyes are like looking in different directions and stuff. Sometimes his nose is like sometimes his nose is bending.
Wow.
It's that noticeable. And I watched it twice, and I'm like, this is absolutely wild that they made this decision.
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder if they were like cutting around performances. You know what I mean? Because
that's what they were doing.
Because
100%.
he in theory, he may have shot the whole movie in costume as both characters, right? Or maybe they went in there with a plan and said, okay, you're going to be CGI in this moment, and you're not going to be. I mean, but you're right, because it feels like there's no like method to how they are applying this. It just feels like, well, in this scene, it's going to be this because it works better. In this scene, it's going to be that because it works better. But it just feels like, I don't know, maybe this was a fix for something that didn't work when they initially tried it. I don't know.
And that's the thing too, is like part of that, I think Ezra has the ability to do this, but I think part of it is just they should have probably shot all of Ezra's. Let's say we're in his apartment, they shoot all of those scenes. And the thing is, it makes it more rigid. Like, it makes it more structured, the filmmaking. Like, you have to be really thoughtful in how you stitch scenes together and how scenes flow from inserts to wide shots to all those kind of things. And it takes a lot more planning.
Yes.
But that's what you have to do when you're doing that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And you shoot all of his stuff, and then the next day or 2 days later, whatever, 3 days later, you go back and you shoot the other person's stuff.
Yeah.
The side B of the tape, and then you stitch them together. And a lot of that too is the actor and the director and everyone involved, knowing okay, we're not going to deviate from performance too much because we have to always play off this other character who's like take 1, 2, and 3 can't all be different, because then you need to do a take 1, 2, 3 on side B that's going to react to like that. It's a tall order. I get it, but that's the kind of mindset you have to go in when you're making that kind of movie. And I don't feel
don't make a movie where Flash has to be himself in 2 places at a time. I feel like that. Why do they have to do it this way?
They could have just had a different actor as the Flash.
Or made him a little younger. Make him like
They could-
12 or
they coulda-
14, you know, like make him like where
They-
you easily recast him and not feel like it's a weird.
You know what you
like,
could do? You could. I mean, many people would always want to sanction this guy. You
Yeah.
could have had Grant Gustin as the other Flash.
Sure.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
how cool would that have been?
That would
I
have
mean,
been
you could.
awesome. That would have been awesome if they used like a different version of Barry Allen in it.
Yeah. Why?
Got more like
why
a
don't
comic
you?
accurate one or something like that. Now,
Yeah.
I do wanna say-
Again,
I
it
wanna-
puts a spotlight on Ezra though. Like, Ezra, you're not as great as this other guy.
It's true.
You
Okay,
know.
I have a question though. What second Ezra eventually becomes, right? Like this like monster dude. Is he is he supposed to be reverse Flash?
No, he's not.
Okay.
He's like a new creation. There's things that are similar to him in the comics, but
Okay.
I don't think he's called Dark. I don't think it's the name Dark Flashes in the comics. He is in the movie, which we'll get into.
Okay.
We'll get into it in a second. My other complaint that could have fixed the movie was, you know, whenever I saw Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting the giant spider, I
yeah.
literally, you probably heard me. I said, "Oh my God."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like that
Yeah.
alone for me is price of admission bought. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right.
For me, but they should have gone the extra mile to make this, and they're saying stylistic. I almost don't believe it, but they should have went and made this look as realistic as possible. And here's the
Yes.
thing, Daniel, they shot Nicolas Cage in the costume and they CGI'd over it. That's been confirmed now. They
It's,
told us this yesterday.
Mind-boggling.
But the technology is there to make Christopher Reeve look to not talk,
Yeah.
to stand there, to look real.
Yeah.
I can take a screen grab of Mandalorian season
right.
season 2 or whatever, Book of Boba, and I can do the screen grab and be like, that looks real, not moving. He didn't move very much. Christopher Reeve didn't move very much.
No.
You know, he just got to land and sit there and look. You
Yeah.
can do that with deep fake, and you can do it
Yes.
almost imperceptible. But they decided to give them this CGI PS2 kind of graphics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes sense to be like a stylistic thing inside the Chrome Dome because it's kind of like this Man of Steel storytelling
Sure.
kind of story
Right.
hour thing. But once you go to the other worlds, like you're kind of, when they
Yes.
break past the Chrome Dome, which they do, it's like CGI PlayStation stuff. And like, I'm like, I don't think, because like, I mean, the spider looked pretty realistic. Like it looked
Sure.
like CGI, you know, CGI fest, but it looked like that's what you get in a big blockbuster movie.
Right.
But then the actors don't look that way. And
Yeah.
also just weird way of kind of showing this universe, right? And like, or showing the multiverse in terms of
Yeah.
like, I mean, he's running in place. It's like it's a replacement for the cosmic treadmill in the comics.
Sure.
But like, if it was me, I would have had it more like he's running down a tunnel of like glass, and the
Mhm.
glass is shattered, and it's like,
Sure.
and they're like windows into these other
Yeah.
universes.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing, like they chose George Reeves Superman, which has its own set of problems because apparently he got into depression and killed himself because of his attachment to the role of Superman, and he didn't
Who?
want to be recognized.
Christopher Reeve.
George Reeves,
Oh,
which is
okay.
the black and white first live action Superman.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he may have been that second live action actually, but he was like black and white, right?
Gotcha.
And he committed suicide apparently because he was depressed by his acting because he was recognized as Superman, and they bring him back the CGI character.
Yeah.
Kind of weird.
Hopefully, at
but
least they had like the blessing of the estate of his
They
family.
they said they did, which means they got paid, which means I don't think George Reeves cares anymore. Maybe that's really ill forgotten, and I get in trouble for that. But if it was me and I was
I
dead, I
doubt
don't
it.
think I don't think I would care anymore.
Yeah.
If my family can profit on my face, that's my opinion. That's not George
Yeah,
Reeves,
Right.
but
right.
profit, baby, profit from my
Yeah,
on my
right.
face, please.
Did you see the quote from Kevin Smith where he was like, "Once I die, you can put me in porn."
Yeah, which is
He was
great.
commenting on this, and
Yeah,
and
which
I
is
will
great.
say the Nicolas Cage Superman. I think it's really cool in this meta level because of Kevin Smith and because like he was talking about how like he's referenced movies his whole life, and now he's getting so old that movies are referencing him in
Yeah.
this way, and I think that is really cool. I think that
I mean,
it is amazing that like his vision that never really got off the ground is now there's a version out there where it's a somewhat realized depiction of it, and I think that's cool.
oh yeah. Well, it's interesting. You can go down a whole rabbit hole on that movie But the big giant spider thing was a note. One of this executives, I think it might have been Peter
Yeah.
Berger, I could be totally wrong on that. Was like, you have to have a giant spider in it. He's like, what? And so like that sequence is like an amalgamation of Kevin Smith's ideas, Tim Burton's, and the producers. So it's kind of like this weird child, right?
Right.
But if my point was, if you had the technology to bring them in to make them look realistic, you could have done it. But
Mm,
problem with that is too is like they focus on all the Superman mainly and Adam West Batman. It's like,
yes.
and I know we got 3 Batman, but I mean, if it was me, and we're going no hole, like we're going for broke here, Daniel.
Yes.
You have him run down this time tunnel, as I'm describing it, and you
Yes.
have shattered glass, whatever, and you show Grant Gustin Flash, you show Val Kilmer Batman, you show, I mean, do everybody and make it like Spider-Verse. We haven't seen Spider-Verse yet, but you know this from the trailer.
Yeah.
Make it like you have to watch this movie 15 times to absorb all that. And the thing is, and you can keep the pacing going. You don't have to stop the movie to like have Christopher Reeve land and then Nick Cage to fight a spider and look at the screen. Like
Right.
you just have Flash do his thing, and like he is going through the DC universe. You have cartoons, you have comic books, I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that you have the world, you have the whole universe in your hand.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you see Heath Ledger? Like, just again, you just need to show the scenes of the movies as he's running
Right.
by them,
Right.
and you can I mean, like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't know.
mean,
I don't
maybe it's a
understand.
budget thing. I mean, I'm sure it would have cost more to have Heath Ledger in there, and maybe his estate wasn't
Would
cool
it?
with it. I mean,
I
would
mean, I don't
assume
know. But
he's
they
a more
but they
popular
but they don't
actor
have.
and
I don't
person
think.
than
I don't
George Reeves.
think they have. If they own the Dark Knight, they can use the images of
Well,
the Dark Knight into
now-
anything.
I do think if they had done that, whatever backlash they're getting on Reeves would have been quadrupled if they had done that to Heath Ledger, like without permission, essentially. I think
I don't know. I
the
mean, I
little bit
think
of
it's-
blowback we're getting now, and we're only getting a little bit because basically no one knows who that is anymore. And not trying to disrespect him, but like no one really that George Reeves isn't a name that is relevant
Well,
to today's movies and like just pop culture.
It's different. Well,
Ledger
here's the
is, and
well,
Heath
the
Ledger
difference
is,
is
like,
the difference, Daniel, is like I'm talking about seeing windows of scenes. They recreated Christopher Reeves and George Reeves as like a CGI character reacting to this other event. It's different. That's
fair.
if they created Heath Ledger, CGI
Yeah.
deep faked an actor and had Heath Ledger looking and like a new shot, a new character, an actor playing Heath Ledger. That's different. I'm talking about where he's busting through the multiverse and you're seeing, the scenes we've already seen. That's different. That's honoring his work. That's not making his work continue without his blessing. That's the same as using it's a clip show at the Academy Awards where you're like, hey, here's the best Joker actors ever. And we're showing you, and that's honoring him. That's not
Sure.
using him without permission. That's and he got paid for
Yeah.
DC to use the scenes he shot already for the Dark Knight indefinitely,
Fair.
forever.
Yeah.
That's
fair.
different, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was ways of doing it that could have been mind blowing. Even
Yeah.
though I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about this movie, Daniel.
There is, and I think just speaking at a meta level again, I think another thing that just this movie has against it is that no one's really expecting this version of the universe to continue in any meaningful way. You know what I mean? And so there's this like, it's almost like the same thing of like watching a prequel and you already know what the ending is, so you're not as invested in the stakes. You know what I mean? Because they feel a little bit manufactured or a little bit. You already know what happens.
I think that I felt this way. I was under the impression, or maybe I just hoped, like again, maybe I got myself in a corner and I hoped for this to be true. But I was under the impression that when Barry, we always knew going to the movie that he was going to come out of a new timeline.
Yes.
We knew that. Like just
Yes.
based on the type of movie it was, based on the story it was kind of referencing, we knew that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I anticipated that the universe that it was the time that was the reboot. That's how you explained the reboot.
Right.
But now I'm like, this is not this they didn't do that.
Right.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
because you didn't do that is because George Clooney walks out the end, which I mean, great. I mean, it's another like
Interesting.
holy crap.
It's interesting.
It's like holy crap. That's wild that they got George
Yeah.
Clooney to come back, even though we also here's the thing too. We knew it was the first set photos we ever saw.
Right.
Was Michael Keaton in that scene 3
Yes.
years ago while shooting. The idea was before Walter Hamada got let go and all these things
Yeah.
was Michael Keaton was supposed to walk out. He was alive.
Yeah.
Supergirl shows up. She's alive. She
Mm.
replaced Henry Cavill. And then there's a post-credit scene with Ben Affleck reaching out to Barry saying, hey, we're stuck somewhere. You got to help us out.
Oh, wow.
Setting up Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right.
Like
right.
a true multiverse movie, right?
Right.
Then it changed again when they announced Henry Cavill. And it's supposed to be Supergirl and Henry Cavill at the end of the movie. And then Walter Hamada is let go. David
Yeah.
Zaslav comes in. The Rock,
Yeah.
Black Adam tanks. James Gunn and Peter Safran team up. And then it's like, okay, we reshoot with George Clooney in January.
Yeah.
And Batgirl gets canceled because, and keep in mind, Michael Keaton had shot stuff for Batgirl. He'd shot stuff
Right.
for Aquaman. Because he was supposed to be Batman. He was supposed to be Batman
Yeah.
in this universe. And then they reshot stuff with Ben Affleck for Aquaman. And now they've
Yeah.
taken that scene out because
Yeah.
Ben Affleck's not Batman anymore, supposedly. Who
Right.
knows anymore?
Right.
So it's like, I thought this was going to be the James Gunn universe at the end of it. And now I'm like, oh, this isn't. This is a
right.
separate universe. And so, like,
Right.
this doesn't, it just creates more confusion for me. And I'm as plugged in as anybody, and I don't know
Yeah.
the answer. I don't know
Right.
the answer.
Yeah, no, it is. It feels very messy, and I just want to point out, I didn't even realize this till I got back, but I'm like, you didn't even use the very best Batman Bruce Wayne we've ever had, which is Christian Bale. Like, and I'm
He wouldn't have-
sure
I don't think he
Christian
would
Bale
have
would
showed up,
never
though.
soil himself with like this DCEU.
Why would
right?
he?
Like,
Yeah.
why would he attach himself to something that has been a like consistent failure? When his movies are still considered maybe the best superhero movies of all time.
Well, I mean, it makes
You know.
total sense to get George Clooney, though, because the thing is,
It does.
you end on a note that's humorous, but
Yes.
also it's very clear that this is not the universe James Gunn is going to be doing, because we know George
Right.
Clooney's not going to be our Batman for Brave and the Bold. We know that.
right.
And also, Andy Muschietti is sitting there on the red carpet saying, I'm never going to recast the Flash if we do another Flash movie. He knows right then there's never going to be another Flash movie. He knows right then that he's Brave and the Bold director.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to do Brave and the Bold and then go back to Flash 2? No. Ezra Miller is done as the Flash. It's official. It just hasn't been announced yet. And it's also triply official. I skipped double. It's triply official, Daniel, after the box office it had over the weekend. It barely made $60 million.
Yeah.
It was projected to make 140. It made
Which is,
60.
I mean, our theater was pretty. There was a decent amount of people.
It was.
You know,
It was. It was. And it
yeah.
was decent, okay, at the 12 o'clock the next day. But then it's 66% Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's not going to be any hype that gets people to go to the movie that weren't already planning to go to it, right? The
Yeah,
people
and
that we're going to see it, have seen it, and the people that were on the fence, nothing is going to be pulling them over the fence.
Well, then here's another thing for you too, Daniel. It's like this movie is adapting Flashpoint in a loose way, right?
Right.
Here's the things. A Reverse Flash isn't in it, which is a problem, and which we'll get to in a second.
Right.
Other thing is, they're like, okay, the big cataclysmic event is General Zod, which is like they're trying to use an in-universe, event that also. But here's the thing: no one cares about that. No one showed up for Man of Steel. Not like they did.
Right.
No one has liked these last 10 DCU movies. Not
Right.
really. I mean, besides Wonder
Right.
Woman. You know what I'm saying? Suicide Squad, which is separate almost.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're reference in the Flashpoint comic book, which is not the greatest comic. It's not bad,
Right.
but you had Aquaman and Wonder Woman. They were in a relationship, and I think they lose a baby or something, and they go to war, and it's them at they're fighting, and like it's Atlanteans versus Amazons, which was
Sure.
referenced in
Yeah.
Justice League,
Yeah.
and it was like them fighting, and you have Aquaman and you have her doing her thing, and that'd have been way more interesting than
Right.
seeing General Zod come back and Michael Shannon like phoning in his lines to get a paycheck
Yeah.
because he was.
Yeah.
And again, I get it because the idea was that Kara was supposed to be in the new DC universe, and then but it feels less interesting when you don't have that conclusion, because you're like, oh, she's a one and done now, like she's gonna die.
I liked her as Supergirl. I don't think she had nearly enough, like she had like nothing to work with. Her role was very tiny and like had barely any lines. But I liked what we got from her, you know. But yeah, I know. I mean, I think it is just it's hard. Like, for one, the movie on its own is just not great. And then feeling like it's not leading anywhere, or where it's leading doesn't matter anymore. And it's hard to find a lot of things to be positive about with this film. And I'm positive that, like, I'm hopeful that James Gunn is going to turn the DCU around creatively. I'm hopeful of that. But
they also need to
nothing
understand
to do with these characters or this universe. So when I think about what I'm hopeful about with the DCU, it has nothing to do with this movie at all.
And they have to understand that the DC universe property is pretty damaged right now, and that Superman Legacy can't be expected to make $1 billion. They have
it's
to,
like nominated for an Academy Award or something. I mean,
they have to understand, Daniel, that like if this movie loses $100 million, but it's critically received well, that's a win.
Yes.
They have to be prepared on Superman Legacy and maybe the next two movies to lose hundreds of millions of dollars to gain public trust back.
Yeah. I could see Batman doing well just because of the IP. It's fucking Batman and one of the most well-known, well-liked superheroes of all time, you know, with Spider-Man. And so it's like this, like, I think Batman they'll make good money on it, unless it is just a steaming pile of shit, which just seems unlikely. But yeah, I think you're right. I think when it comes, Blue Beetle, I don't expect that to do numbers. You know what I mean?
No,
I didn't even know that was a character until they announced the movie. Okay.
Yeah, I did. But
I assumed it was a Beetleborg when I first saw the name. But like,
I love
Beetleborgs. love the Beetleborgs, but Beetleborgs. But yeah, it's just like they have such an uphill mountain to climb with this IP. And
There's
I think
so much pressure.
Might have the right people in place. They have probably, in my opinion, it would be hard to find people that in theory could do a better job. But I think this movie has highlighted it in the last, honestly, even when I think about just some of the movies that previous Marvel directors have done after the Marvel movies, it really does seem more and more evident that the secret sauce of Marvel has always been Kevin Feige. And like someone that has been at least highly involved in the creative production and the story and what the overall like story is, the Thanos arc and all that kind of stuff. But that, like, I mean, you look at the Russo brothers and their efforts after Marvel movies have been fairly mediocre at best, right? And they made some of the best Marvel movies we've ever gotten. What's the difference? Well, they didn't have Kevin Feige on these new movies. And I think the question is, can James Gunn, and I'm sorry, I never remember the other guy that's like the business head of it, that's partnered with him.
Peter Safran.
Yeah, Safran. Can they be that? I mean, I know James Gunn can direct good movies. I know he can tell a good story. I know when he leans into his style, into his strengths, like the Suicide Squad movie he made, or like Peacemaker, or like the most recent Guardians movie, I think he does really well. I think we'll see if that can translate to and here's the thing, it's different too, because like James Gunn's actually directing movies too. He's gonna be directing the Superman movie. Like Kevin never did that, so it's like
it's interesting. What's funny too is that he
created a
said,
model that works.
Well, they did, yeah. And what's funny, just a side note, he said that it's one of the best Superman movies he's ever seen, and like
James
he has
Gunn
to
did.
think, and he has to think that his 3 Guardians movies are better than that, because they are.
Well, I mean,
so like this,
I think,
does
I
he
think at
think
this
he's
point,
made some of the best movies ever made? It's just a funny little caveat there.
I think at this
it's
point, James
interesting.
Gunn, he's mostly speaking for the Warner Brothers position than he is for him personally. I think at this point, I think he's he's very active on social media, like in some ways that I feel like is a little bit like over. Like sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes it's like, I don't think you need to correct every fan theory on Twitter necessarily.
No, I think, well, he said that he's going to pull back a little bit. But I mean, let's just be clear about a couple things. I think overall the movie it's trying to do the things that I want in super, like it's trying to have a
Right.
lot of heart. It really is. It's trying to
It is. Yeah.
is trying to put these characters in tough positions and make them like confront who they were to become who they need to be.
Right.
Like they are doing that. Just a few more tidbits, Daniel, and we'll have to get off here. One
Sure.
is it's weird that he moves the can of soup at the end. It's like he didn't learn anything almost. I mean, part of it is
Yeah, I agree.
he thinks like, oh, I'm doing this that will basically be evidence in the future, but that's changing the timeline. Like that he should have known by now that's changing the timeline. And it clearly did. It's like he didn't really, it's like he learned 80% of what he was supposed to learn,
Right.
which is kind of odd.
It was.
Another thing is Andy Muschietti has said, which this doesn't matter anymore because he knows and we know that he knows that he's not directing the Flash 2 or there is a Flash 2.
Right.
But he said if he was going to do it, he would do Reverse Flash because Reverse Flash, his words, this is in the comics, that Reverse Flash killed his mom. That's who killed his mom.
That's what I thought.
And-
I was thinking.
yeah.
That.
And it's like, I just don't understand why you wouldn't.
Give a hint of that.
It's that or like instead of doing Dark Flash, you could just do the Reverse Flash.
Yeah, it would have
And make
been
it more
so much
interesting.
more. Well, and it's like the key event is that his mom gets killed, but we never get any information on the death or why it happens. And I think that would have been much more interesting if that's what we're focusing on. That's what we've got to figure out, and that's what he ends up, working, dealing with Reverse Flash. That's such a more interesting concept. I think.
Well, it's more interesting
because they set it up as like it's just like random violence that kills his mom, and I'm sure maybe they even shot some stuff that hinted at more, and because they know they're not doing anything in the future, they just left it all out because maybe eventually the
way they work around this plot wise, they said they gave Barry the information that you can't change too much, like you can't change your mom's death, but you can change like, a can of soup or something. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can change. He is trying to save his mom, but he does the soup thing. It's like so uninteresting plot device. You would want to go stop the guy who killed your mom. That would be like the thing that you wouldn't go.
Yeah, you're a superhero. You're a superhero.
Here's the thing. It's if it is the Reverse Flash, the dad being there is not going to matter.
Right.
It's the Reverse Flash.
Yeah. You're right.
So it's like, so I'm saying like that's, and like, so they if they were going to make a sequel, they already kind of put a problem. They made a problem right then in the plot for the future, but it should have been the Reverse Flash. And in Flashpoint, that's what happens. He goes back to stop.
Yeah.
He goes back to, to save his mom. And I think it ends up, he kills the Reverse Flash. So it's like he killed somebody to save his mom.
Sure.
But he doesn't remember it. And then he ends up having to, and here's the other cool. I mean, there's two more things here. It's a wasted opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing about Flashpoint, the best thing about the Batman Flashpoint there was that when he goes back in time, we get the Flashpoint Batman, which is, it's Thomas Wayne, not Bruce Wayne, which I get it. If someone said, Donovan, you can have Michael Keaton back as Batman, or you could have Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Flashpoint Batman.
Right.
I would probably be like, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's probably a better plot, but like it's Michael Keaton Batman.
Right.
But what the cool thing about that story, Daniel, at the end of that story, was that Thomas Wayne gives Barry a note. And he gives it to Bruce, and he gives it in the Batcave, and Bruce, and he's like, here's proof that I did what I said I did time-wise. It's a note from your father saying, don't waste your life being Batman.
Yeah.
Because that's so fun. Can you imagine Ben Affleck in the cave sitting there reading that note and crying, like a tear falling on the note? Yeah. Can you imagine that movie?
Yeah.
It's so much more powerful. And again, it doesn't fit the reboot. It doesn't fit bringing Supergirl in. It doesn't fit Michael Keaton coming back into the future. All these things, right?
Well, the hope is, I think if the DCEU takes off under Gunn and Saffron, and if they create a universe that is at the level or very close to the level of Marvel, or at least the early Marvel, I would be flabbergasted if they didn't eventually do the story again. Now it may be 15 years or 10 years, and we may need that much time to forget about this one. But like, I fully expect like this, like you said, Flashpoint is one of the most interesting like events in the DCEU, like the DC comics, right? Like that's just a really big event that involves a lot of superheroes and is like a big giant crossover.
Honestly,
it's like
it's not a great event. It's very perspective to the Flash, and it feels very contained. It was big for the fact that what it did for the DC comics in itself,
right?
But it's a perfect mechanism for a movie, to do all the things you want to see in a movie. That's why it's perfect.
Yeah,
and here, I'll say this. So here's the benefit for them. This is my last thing I'll say, and I can talk about this movie for 2-3 hours, Daniel. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future on other DC stuff.
Of course,
I do think they also had another hill to climb because this was the first Flash movie. And so we had a one shot in BVS of Ezra. You had him as in Justice League, and then you had him in this. And in all those, we never knew his origin story.
Right.
And it was smart. I can see the argument being made to have a second Barry because you got to have your origin story and you're caking it too. That is smart because it takes you as the audience member to the place where he had his origin the first time, and you got to see what and that for all intents and purposes what that young Barry does, like running around the city and his clothes melts off. That absolutely happened also with our Barry too, but you're just seeing it from a different perspective, different time. And so that is smart in the way that like, okay, well, we haven't had an origin story for the Flash. And the comic people know, but the movie people don't know at all.
Right.
So it's kind of like
comic
this
accurate
in terms of that's how he gets his powers. He's at Central City Labs, lightning strikes.
Gotcha.
What's cool about the comics on Crisis on Infinite Earth, which is the very first I would consider big crossover ever. I think I mentioned this to you in the past.
Yeah.
But in order to beat the Anti-Monitor, Flash has to like basically run faster than he'd ever run before. And to destroy him, and he does it. He goes so fast, he becomes the lightning bolt that strikes himself in the past.
Wow, that's cool.
And that's how Barry Allen dies in the comics.
By giving his past self the powers.
He becomes Speed Force itself, and he gives himself the power. It's a loop.
Yeah, right.
I got chills talking about it just now. And then he ends up. He come back recently in the last 10, 15 years, but he was dead for like 25 years in comics.
Which I think that's an awesome way to do time travel. I think those are the
it was the gold standard.
Stories.
Yeah, it was the gold standard. Like, a comic book character died and was dead for like 25 human years.
Wow.
And then Wally West come in, and Wally West is probably what you're familiar with, and that's like everyone's favorite. That's like everyone's favorite Flash because he was the only one around.
Was he in Justice League Unlimited? That cartoon?
Yeah, Wally West. He's the best Flash. Yeah, or I'm partial to Barry because Barry's OG, but Wally is like everyone's favorite for a good reason. For a very good reason.
Sure.
But anyway, Daniel, I still like the movie.
I mean, I think you liked it more than
Badly.
me. I think you have more nostalgia for the things that it does.
Again, I could have paid $10 just for that Superman live scene, which is Nicolas Cage scene.
Listen, it goes back. It's not horrible.
Nostalgia.
It's not like you watch it and you're like, oh, I'm so ready for this to be done. Especially like a first time watch, you're wanting to know what happens next. It's an interesting and well paced, well told story, I will say, which gives me hope that Muschietti can do Batman well. But it's also just like, it's not going to blow you away in any way. And I think at the end of the day, there are probably more frustrations than there are like positives, just because I think, like you said, we know what this story could be. And I think that's oftentimes the worst kind of movie to watch, right? It's not the bottom barrel, like The Room, or like these movies that are so bad you can actually start enjoying how bad they are. It's these movies that are like almost great, but not. And you, like the you can just see it there on the floor, the things they had to do to make it great, and they just didn't for whatever reason. Like those are the most frustrating movies, I think, for me. It's just those ones where like for example, The Batman, the most recent one. That's a perfect example of like it's all right there. You have all the pieces, but you just didn't put it together right. And it's so frustrating because I want to like this movie so bad, but I can't because you keep messing it up for me in these ways.
That movie is almost perfect for like some very simple glaring issues. Like
Yes, that
everything that's not narrative is almost virtually perfect.
Yes, you're right. And so I think this is not that. I mean, I don't feel as strongly about this one of like, oh, it's almost there. But I think it's a similar situation where it is like, there's a lot of good pieces here. There's a lot of things that do work. And I think even just how you're telling story does work. I just think the meat of the story has some intrinsic issues that aren't fixable even just by writing a different script, right? Like I think the problems here was some of the casting. Like the problems here are a bit more like foundational with I think this movie of just the casting. The problem is all the movies that came before it that it had nothing to do with. You know what I mean? Like there's issues here that weren't just as simple to fix as maybe the issues in the Batman where you're just like, okay, just write it differently.
Well, most of these issues are circumstance. Yeah, it's most of these. It's the baggage of the DCEU.
Yes,
it's the visual effects not being good.
Yes,
it's the casting of Ezra, which that's the thing
is the baggage of the DCU. You know?
Yeah, if exactly. So if they had just had a different actor, if they had
slight differences in the plot, just to, like it's not even crazy. I mean, you keep most of it the same. I think you just replace Zod with Reverse Flash, which is so much more interesting. You know what I mean? Like he's
I mean, there's virtually no villain until the very last second, and the thing is, the villain's yourself. Sometimes I get it, but he didn't even fight him. He didn't even fight his villain.
Just talked his way out, right? Talked him into stopping.
Well, young Barry jumps in front of him and sacrifices himself, which I'm not quite clear on it. I'm not quite clear if Dark Flash does it on purpose to kill himself, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I don't know.
Also, why wouldn't he know that? Well, I guess time shit. I'm just like, well, wouldn't he anticipate that? Because that was him at a younger age.
Well, it's time travel. Who knows?
This like happened once. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, who knows? I don't know. But there's virtually no villain in that movie at all.
No.
Right. Which is kind of amazing that it still even works
as well as it does. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because the crux of the movie is the movie is always, as soon as it opens, is getting to the part where he has to let his mom die. That's the whole point of that movie.
Right.
And even and like in that movie, it is kind of, and there's some weird dialogue stuff like, I know I'm some strange woman in a grocery store, but can I give you a hug? And it's just kind of like,
yeah. That was like in modern day, no one would ever do that. You know what I mean? Like it just. Well, feels
to be fair, that was like in the early.
Okay, fair, fine. 80s,
2000s. Well, no, I guess it was 2010. No, 90s probably. Yeah, late 90s probably.
Yeah, okay.
So, but the point still stands. There is just some weird. I mean, that's the thing. You go back and watch the first season of Flash, and they do all this. They do all the same stuff. They do Flashpoint.
Yeah.
Not even Flashpoint, but they do Reverse Flash killing his mom. Right. All those things. They do it way better.
Are you talking about the movie, the cartoon movie?
No, the TV show, first season of Flash.
Okay.
And it's just and granted, it's on a CW budget, but man, Grant Gustin, he's a much better Flash. I mean, it's like,
wow.
And when he was cast, I was like, he's still not my Flash. Like, he's still not the guy that I would want to cast. But he's great though. I mean, he's like, I would a billion times take him over Ezra Miller, and I wouldn't cast him if it was my choice.
Yeah. Well, there's
you need to watch Shazam.
Say. I like we could do a follow-up pod just to like dissect, but I do think we are, and I think this is a testament to it. Like a lot of the problems with this movie were inherited, right?
Yes.
And couldn't really do anything about. And so I think what this movie does, and I think that's also where it's just kind of a tricky thing. People don't know quite how to feel about it. Is it makes you want to talk about the future, but just the future is so nebulous right now. And it's just.
And I thought it wasn't going to be.
When are they going to make the switch from this universe to the one where the brave and the bold Batman is the Batman? Like, how are they going to do that now? What movie does that take place in?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like to me, Daniel, it's just like I don't know if it's a clean break or why. I don't know if Blue Beetle is the first movie. I don't know if Aquaman is the second movie. They said
Blue Beetle is the first movie in the new DCU, and I heard that Aquaman is not. Aquaman is like the last movie in the old one.
Well, they said this recently. Well, they said that Flash was in the Blue Beetle goes in the Flat or in Aquaman, but they did say that. I swear I read this somewhere that Blue Beetle is not the first DCU movie, but it's the first DCU character. And I was like, what is that?
What's the first DCU
What
movie?
is what does that mean? I think
Oh, does that mean
maybe
he's going to originate in this universe but get pulled over to the new one?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. That's the thing, Daniel. I'm
Yeah.
I'm more plugged
Yeah.
in than everybody. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Like other
Maybe-
than making the decisions in the room,
Right.
I know everything. I know every
Yeah.
permutation that was supposed to happen that we're privy to as an audience members.
Right.
And I don't know the answer. And that's why I
Hopefully-
think
Yeah.
that's another frustration with this movie. I thought I was going to have some answer. I think the
Right.
movie might have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
better. Might have been better. Hey, if he come back to the future and there's a different Flash, that's number
Right.
one.
Right.
They
yes.
they show you who Barry
Yeah.
Allen is, or
Yeah.
Barry Allen dies and Wally West becomes the new Flash somewhere.
Sure.
It almost would have been better that Bruce Wayne walks out and we did not see who it was.
I agree.
They should have recast
Yeah.
him at the end of the movie because you could just shoot that easy, have the
Right.
same stuff with a new actor, and then have Bruce Wayne walk out and you just see his feet. He's like, "Who the
Yeah.
f is this guy?"
Though they would have, I think the tricky thing is if they did use the voice of someone they'd already cast, internet would have figured it out somehow. Used AI
Well, you
to
don't.
like match.
Well,
the
you
vocal
you
shit.
just don't have him talk.
Yeah,
You just
that's
have
true.
him say like the reporters and Bruce and whatever. And he's and you're just
Yeah.
like
You're right.
Like
No, I
Bruce
think-
Wayne, Bruce Wayne, and he's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And that's the end of the
Yeah.
movie, and then it'd be like, "That's we're in a new universe. That's it. We did it." Like new actors.
Yeah,
to
you end on
Flash.
the line where Flash says, "You're not Bruce Wayne."
Yeah,
So, cut to credits. And I
Yeah.
think I'm hoping we'll get some info at Hall H this year, right? I know Marvel's not going to be there, which is interesting.
I don't.
But
Well, maybe DC will still show up. I just
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean,
They should.
if they're doing screen tests of Superman right now, I'm surely the announcement is not too far away of who that's going to be.
I assume they would announce. I'm sure they'll an hour before if DC shows up, an hour before DC, the news will break of who it is,
Yeah, right.
and then they'll announce it on stage. Unfortunately, they'll find out earlier, but
Yeah.
and then they'll
Once you get
probably
that
be
close to
like
the event, too many people that don't
There's
care
too-
get access
yeah.
to the agenda and see names on a
100%.
list. And,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that could be, I for some reason kind of imagine that DC would show up, but I don't know why, but I didn't think too much of it. But now I think they should because they have more to gain and they kind of need to
Yeah.
clarify things and they need the win of who they're casting as Superman. Like they need that to be a big
Yes,
thing.
and do people like it? And for people to like it, yeah.
Lots
Who's your
of
pick
pressure.
right now? Who's your fave of the rumored names?
I think it's Dave or it's Corn Sweat. I think it's him. David Corn Sweat.
Okay.
I don't want Tyler Hoechlin as Superman.
Arn Sweet?
Maybe it's Corn Sweet.
Yeah, he's got the hair.
Yeah, it's him.
Wonder,
He would
what's
be my pick.
Has he been in anything notable?
Of the three rumored. I mean, there's a shot of him as Superman. You're like, yeah, that's Superman,
Yeah.
But I do not want Tyler Hoechlin. He's the guy who played Beast. He's in Mad
No.
Max.
What about the guy from Supernatural that was in The Boys?
Well, they're saying
Heard
he
his
could be
name.
as Batman.
Oh, as Batman. He's the Batman rumor.
Well, he's been campaigning for
Oh.
Batman for like since he left Supernatural. And he's the voice
Oh,
of
really?
Batman in some of the animated movies now.
Oh, cool.
He
I
got
could
that gig because
see
he like
him.
he cut. Well, I mean, hey, yeah, he was asked this like 2 days ago. I'm like, man, they should make him. The thing is, he's older now than Ben Affleck was when he don't look.
He doesn't
at it.
look it.
No, he doesn't look. I think he'd be a perfect Batman with like a son.
A son, yeah. Yeah. No,
I think so.
That would work for me. Yeah, it's gonna be very, very interesting as we move forward. I think there's a lot of things that should be announced soon that will be exciting.
How can our listeners write into us, Daniel?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/2for1mail and let us know what you thought of The Flash. Were you amazed by the amazing CGI and graphics that have never been better in another superhero film? Or do you have a working brain? Let us know at bit.ly/2for1mail.
And if you can't hit us up at our Bitly, you can always find us in the comment section below, youtube.com/2for1studios, the best place to consume the content. Sorry.
Indeed.
I was looking at more Superman Legacy news just popping up. As
Oh,
I'm
anything
ending the
anything we
podcast.
should do? Just
Just a little blurb from James Gunn. He says, reboot is so different from anything I've ever done, which is positive because it needs to be different than
yeah, I
his
mean
other stuff.
that's one thing we've talked about. I think before is that like how do the Gunnisms work in Superman? He's gonna have to tone it back. I mean, you can't have a superhero movie with like lots of like body gross
Dick jokes, yeah.
or like
Yeah.
like it just doesn't work. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that.
I agree. My name is Donovan Thompson,
I am Daniel Wingfield.
and we have spoken.